The chaos started with a shout. Not from the woman in the hoodie or from Westbrook. From somewhere behind me. "Hey, what's going on over there?" I turned. A police officer was walking down the sidewalk. Must have been on patrol nearby. Maybe someone else had already called. Or maybe the 911 operator had sent someone to my location after I hung up. Everything happened fast after that. The woman in the hoodie saw the officer. Her eyes went wide. She looked at the second person, then back at Westbrook. They were running out of time. The second person grabbed Westbrook's arm, not violently, but firm, insistent. They were talking rapidly, urgently. The police officer was crossing the street now. I said, "What's going on?" I stood frozen on the sidewalk. Part of me wanted to run, to disappear before I got pulled into this, but my feet wouldn't move. I just watched as everything I'd been dreading for 2 days finally happened. The woman in the hoodie pulled something from her own pocket. Papers, a folder. She shoved them at Westbrook. He took them reflexively, confused. "Sir, step away from these people," the officer called out. But Westbrook wasn't moving. He was looking at the papers. Even from across the street, I could see his face changing, color draining, hands starting to shake. The second person let go of his arm, pulled off their baseball cap. Long hair fell down. Another woman. She said something to the officer, calm, explaining. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see the body language, non-threatening, cooperative. The officer relaxed slightly, hand moving away from his belt. They talked for what felt like forever, but was probably only 2 minutes. The woman in the hoodie, the second woman, the officer, Westbrook standing there holding those papers like they were burning his hands. Then something unexpected happened. The officer nodded, stepped back, like whatever they'd told him was enough, like this wasn't what it looked like. The 2 women turned and walked away, not running, just walking, calm, like they'd done exactly what they came to do. Westbrook stood there with the officer, still holding the papers. The officer was talking to him now, asking questions probably. Westbrook just kept shaking his head. I realized I'd been holding my breath. I let it out, felt dizzy, sat down right there on the sidewalk. What had just happened? What was in those papers? Why had the officer let them go? My phone buzzed. Text from Jessica. "Hey, hope you're feeling better. Need anything?" Right. I was supposed to be sick, home in bed, not downtown watching whatever this was. I texted back, "Thanks, just resting. See you tomorrow." When I looked up, the 2 women were gone, disappeared into the crowd. Westbrook and the officer was still there. Westbrook was on his phone now, looked agitated. The officer was writing something down. I needed to leave, needed to get out of there before anyone noticed me, before anyone asked why I'd been watching, before that 911 call came back to haunt me. I stood up. My legs felt weak. I walked quickly toward the subway station, didn't look back. On the train ride home, my mind was racing. I pulled out the burner phone, checked for messages. Nothing new. The last message was still from this morning. Tomorrow is the day. Well, today had been the day, and whatever they'd planned had happened. Sort of. Not exactly how they described it in the messages, but something had definitely happened. I got home around 10:30, locked my door, sat at my kitchen table with both phones in front of me again, just like Tuesday night. But everything was different now. I'd seen them, the phone's owner, her friend. I'd watched them confront Westbrook. I'd seen the papers they gave him. I'd seen his reaction. But I still didn't understand. What was the plan? What did those papers say? Why had the officer let them go? I opened my laptop, searched for any news about Richard Westbrook. Nothing new, just the old articles about the harassment allegations. I checked social media, searched his name, his company name. Nothing. If anyone at the scene had posted videos, they hadn't gone viral yet. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe it had looked too boring from the outside, just people talking. But it hadn't been boring. Whatever those women had given Westbrook, it had shaken him. I'd seen that clearly. I thought about the messages again. Someone's going to get hurt. His reputation, that's who was going to get hurt. He deserves this, whatever was in those papers. After this is over, everything will be different. For him, for them, for everyone involved. I picked up the burner phone, stared at it. Should I keep it? Get rid of it? What if they came looking for it? Then I remembered. They'd said they were getting rid of their phones on Friday, tomorrow, so maybe they wouldn't come looking. Maybe they'd just assume it was lost forever. Around midnight, new messages came through. My heart jumped. I grabbed the phone. M. We did it. It's done. Response. I can't believe we actually did it. My hands are still shaking. M. Mine too, but we did the right thing. You know we did. That cop scared me. I thought we were finished. M. But we weren't, because we didn't do anything illegal. We just gave him information, truth. That's not a crime. What if he doesn't do anything? What if he just throws it away? M. He won't. You saw his face. He knows those statements are real. He knows we have proof. He knows if he doesn't handle this right, we go public. So now we wait? M. Now we wait. Give him until tomorrow at noon like we said. If he doesn't respond, we follow through. Press, lawyers, everything. I hope he does the right thing. I don't want to destroy him. I just want him to take responsibility. M. I know. That's what makes you better than him. But if he chooses destruction, that's on him, not you. Thank you for doing this with me, for helping me when no one else would. M. Always. That's what we do. We protect each other. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow we see if justice actually works. The conversation ended there. I sat staring at the phone for a long time. So that was it. The papers were statements, proof, evidence they'd gathered about what Westbrook had done. They'd given him a choice, handle it privately or face public exposure. Not murder, not violence, just truth, just consequences. I felt stupid for panicking, for thinking the worst, for spending 2 days terrified of something that turned out to be people seeking justice the only way they knew how. But I also felt something else. Admiration, maybe. These women had been hurt. The system had failed them, and instead of giving up, they found another way, a smarter way. I finally went to bed around 1 a.m., slept better than I had in days. When I woke up Friday morning, I checked the burner phone immediately. No new messages. I got ready for work, took the burner phone with me. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I wanted to see how this ended. Maybe I felt invested now after everything. At work, I tried to focus, made it through the morning, had lunch at my desk, kept checking the phone. Still nothing. At 12:15 p.m., a message came through. M. Did you hear from him? Long pause, 3 dots appearing and disappearing. Finally, yes, his lawyer called. They want to meet. M. That's good. That means they're taking it seriously. They offered money, a settlement, in exchange for silence. M. What did you say? I said no. Money won't fix this. I want an admission, an apology, real changes at the company, protection for current employees. Good. Don't let them buy your silence. That's what they always do. The lawyer said they need time to discuss. We'll call back by end of day. Okay, we wait. But if they try to lowball you or intimidate you, we go to plan B. I know. I'm ready either way. I put the phone down, looked around my office. Everything looked the same as always. Jessica at her desk, our boss in his office, the copy machine humming. But I felt different, like I'd seen something important, something real, something that mattered more than marketing reports and client presentations. The afternoon dragged. I kept checking the phone. No updates. The waiting must have been torture for them, for the women who'd put everything on the line for justice. Around 4 p.m., another message. M. Any word? Not yet. I'm going crazy. M. Stay strong. They're probably fighting internally. Lawyers versus PR people versus Westbrook himself. These things take time. What if they just ignore us? What if they think we're bluffing? M. Then tomorrow morning, we're outside their office with signs, and we're calling every reporter in the city, and we're posting everything online. We're not bluffing, and they know it. You're right. We have nothing to lose now. M. Exactly. We already lost everything when he destroyed our careers. This is just getting it back. I put the phone down, looked around my office. Everything looked the same as always. Jessica at her desk,
Our boss in his office, the copy machine humming, but I felt different, like I'd seen something important, something real, something that mattered more than marketing reports and client presentations. The afternoon dragged. I kept checking the phone. No updates. The waiting must have been torture for them, for the women who'd put everything on the line for justice. Around 4 p.m., another message. M. Any word? Not yet. I'm going crazy. M. Stay strong. They're probably fighting internally. Lawyers versus PR people versus Westbrook himself. These things take time. What if they just ignore us? What if they think we're bluffing? M. Then tomorrow morning, we're outside their office with signs, and we're calling every reporter in the city, and we're posting everything online. We're not bluffing, and they know it. You're right. We have nothing to lose now.
Private apology to each of us, not public. His lawyers said that's the best they can do. Public admission opens them to lawsuits. Is that enough? For you? Long pause. Almost 5 minutes before the response came. I don't know. Part of me wants him publicly destroyed, wants everyone to know what he did, but another part of me just wants to move on, to get my life back, to stop living in this nightmare. It's your choice. I'll support whatever you decide. What would you do? Honestly, I think you already won. He's losing his company. His reputation within the industry will be destroyed even without public statements. People talk. Board members talk. He'll never work again, not really. And you get money to start over. And other women are protected. That's a win. It doesn't feel like a win. Because you wanted him to suffer. And I get that. But sometimes justice isn't about suffering. It's about stopping the harm, making sure it doesn't happen again. And you did that. Another long pause. Okay, I'll take the deal. But I want it in writing. Everything. Signed by lawyers. No backing out. Smart. I'll call my lawyer friend. Get them to review everything before you sign. Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have. You're stronger than you think. But I'm glad I could help. I sat there holding the phone, feeling like I'd just finished reading a book, a story with a beginning, middle, and end. But it wasn't my story. I was just a witness, an accidental observer who'd stumbled into someone else's fight for justice. Over the next few days, I kept the burner phone, checked it obsessively, but no new messages came through. The conversation was over. On Tuesday, exactly 1 week after I'd found the phone, I saw a small article in the business section of the city newspaper. Richard Westbrook was stepping down as CEO of his consulting company. The article said it was for personal reasons, to pursue other interests. I knew better. I knew the real reason, and somewhere in this city, 2 women knew it too. I thought about them a lot over the following weeks, wondered what they were doing, if they'd taken the settlement, if they'd moved on, if they felt satisfied or still angry, if they ever thought about that Thursday night when everything changed. I also thought about myself, about the choices I'd made, keeping the phone instead of turning it in, reading their messages, following them, almost calling the police. Had I done the right thing? I still wasn't sure, but I knew one thing. I'd cared enough to try to figure it out, cared enough to pay attention, cared enough to show up that Thursday night even though I was terrified. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all anyone could ask. One Friday afternoon, about a month after finding the phone, I was at the same subway station, same platform, end of another work week, heading home. The platform was crowded like always. I was standing near the same spot where I'd found the phone. Not intentionally, just coincidence. That's when I saw her, the woman in the hoodie, except she wasn't wearing a hoodie now. She was in business clothes, nice jacket, professional looking. She had a briefcase, looked like she was heading home from work too. Our eyes met for just a second. She didn't recognize me. Why would she? I was just another face in the crowd, just another commuter on a Friday evening. But I recognized her. And in that moment, I saw something on her face that made everything worth it. She looked peaceful, calm, like a weight had been lifted. She got on the train. I let it go, waited for the next one. On my ride home, I finally made a decision. I took out the burner phone, looked at it one last time, all those messages, all that planning, all that fear and courage and determination. Then I turned it off, really off, held down the power button until the screen went black. At home, I pulled out a hammer, smashed the phone to pieces, broke the screen, bent the frame, made sure nothing could ever be recovered from it. I threw the pieces in different trash cans around my neighborhood, made sure they couldn't be put together. It was time to let this go, time to stop carrying someone else's story around with me, time to move on. But something had changed in me, something I couldn't quite explain. I started paying attention at work, really listening when colleagues talked about problems, about unfairness, about situations where they felt powerless. I started speaking up more too, not in dramatic ways, just in small ones, questioning decisions that seemed wrong, supporting people who needed it, using whatever small power I had to make things better. Jessica noticed. One day at lunch, she said, "You're different lately, more confident or something. What changed?" "I don't know, just decided to care more, I guess." She laughed. "Well, keep it up. It looks good on you." That night, I thought about her words, about caring more, about paying attention, about being present in the world instead of just moving through it. That phone taught me something important, that ordinary people can do extraordinary things, that justice, real justice, sometimes comes from unexpected places. And sometimes the most important thing you can do is just care, pay attention, show up, even when it's hard, even when you're scared, even when you don't know what the right thing is. I thought about Westbrook too sometimes, wondered if he'd actually changed, if losing his company had made him reflect on his actions, if he'd ever really understood the harm he caused. Probably not. Men like that rarely do. But at least he couldn't hurt anyone else. At least his victims got some measure of justice, some acknowledgement of their pain. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't everything they deserved. But it was something. And sometimes something is enough. The weeks turned into months. Life went on. Work, commutes, weekends, the normal rhythm of existence in a big city. But I carried that story with me, those messages, that confrontation, those two brave women who refused to stay silent. And every time I felt like nothing I did mattered, every time I felt small and powerless, I thought about them, about how they'd taken their power back, about how they'd made change happen, even when the system said it was impossible. I thought about the burner phone, too, about how such a small thing could contain so much pain, so much courage, so much determination. And I thought about that moment on the platform when I bent down to pick up that phone instead of walking past it, how that one choice had led to everything else, all the fear, all the confusion, all the growth. Would I do it again, pick up that phone if I found another one? I didn't know. Part of me hoped I'd never have to make that choice, that I'd never stumble into someone else's crisis again. But another part of me knew that if I did, I couldn't walk past it, couldn't ignore it, couldn't pretend I hadn't seen, because now I knew what I hadn't known before, that these stories are happening all around us, all the time, hidden battles, private wars, people fighting for justice in whatever way they can. And maybe my role wasn't to fight those battles myself, but to bear witness, to pay attention, to care enough to try to understand. That was enough. That had to be enough. 3 months after finding the phone, I saw another small article in the paper. Westbrook's company had been sold. New management, new name. The article mentioned that several former employees had been rehired, including 3 women who'd left under controversial circumstances. I smiled when I read that. They'd gotten their careers back, their reputations back, their power back. The system had failed them, so they created their own justice, and it worked. I cut out that article, kept it in my desk drawer at home. I'm not sure why. Maybe as a reminder, maybe as proof that this really happened, that I didn't imagine it. Or maybe just as evidence that change is possible, that ordinary people can make extraordinary things happen, that justice, real justice, sometimes comes from unexpected places. That article stayed in my drawer for months, I'd look at it sometimes, remember those 2 days of confusion and fear, remember that Thursday night when everything came together. Then one day, I was cleaning out my desk, going through old papers, throwing things away, and I found the article.
I read it again, smiled. Then I threw it away too. I didn't need it anymore. The story was inside me now, part of who I'd become, part of how I saw the world. That phone had given me something I didn't expect. Not answers, not clarity, but awareness, understanding, a window into the hidden battles people fight every day. And maybe that was the real message, not about what those women did or how they did it, but about paying attention, being present, caring enough to notice when something's wrong. I went to bed that night thinking about all of this, about phones and messages and justice and change, about ordinary moments that become extraordinary, about the hidden stories all around us. And as I fell asleep, I had one final thought, one question that I'd probably never know the answer to. Did they ever wonder what happened to their phone? Did they ever think about who might have found it? Did they ever worry that someone read their messages and knew their plan? I hope not. I hope they'd forgotten about it completely, moved on with their lives, found peace and success and happiness. They deserved that. After everything they'd been through, after everything they'd done, they deserved to never think about that phone again. But I would. I'd think about it for the rest of my life, about those 3 days that changed how I saw everything, about the moment I picked up that phone and chose to care instead of walking past. That choice had cost me 3 days of sleep and weeks of anxiety, but it had given me something more valuable, a new way of seeing, a new way of being in the world. And as I drifted off to sleep, I realized something else, something important. I'd been asking the wrong question all along. The question wasn't whether I'd done the right thing by reading those messages, by keeping the phone, by showing up that Thursday night. The question was whether I'd learned anything from it, whether it had changed me, whether I'd become someone who paid attention, who cared, who showed up. And the answer to that question was yes. The phone was gone, smashed and thrown away. The messages were deleted, the screenshots erased, but the lesson remained. Pay attention, care, show up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That was what those 2 women had taught me. That was what that phone had given me. And lying there in my bed, in my small studio apartment, in this big, complicated city, I felt grateful for that Tuesday evening, for that phone, for those messages, for that whole confusing, terrifying, enlightening experience, because it had woken me up, made me more present, more aware, more willing to engage with the world instead of just passing through it. And maybe that was what life was really about. Not the big moments, not the obvious choices, but the small ones, the unexpected ones, the moments when we have to decide whether to pick something up or walk past it. I'd picked it up, and even though I still wasn't sure I'd handled everything perfectly, I knew one thing for certain. I'd cared, I'd tried, I'd shown up, and sometimes that's all any of us can do. Sometimes that's enough. But even as these comforting thoughts filled my mind, even as sleep started to pull me under, a small part of me couldn't let go, couldn't quite settle, because there was something I still didn't know, something that nagged at me even months later. What happened after the settlement was signed, after Westbrook stepped down, after the women got their lives back? Did they stay in touch? Did they remain friends? Or did they drift apart once the battle was over, their bond formed by trauma rather than genuine connection? Did Westbrook really change? Did he understand what he'd done? Or did he just see himself as a victim of modern culture, of women who couldn't take a joke, of a world that had turned against successful men? And what about the other women at his company, the ones who hadn't come forward? Did they feel relieved, vindicated, or did they resent those who'd spoken up, feeling like their own silence had been exposed? These questions would probably never be answered, not for me anyway, because this wasn't really my story. I was just someone who'd found a phone, someone who'd glimpsed a tiny piece of something much larger. But lying there in the dark, I couldn't help but wonder,
Couldn't help but imagine how it all played out after I threw that phone away. And that's when I realized something else, something that made me sit up in bed, suddenly wide awake. There was still one loose end, one thing I'd forgotten about in all my reflecting and learning and growing. The 911 call. I'd called emergency services, then hung up, but they'd said they were sending officers to my location. They'd said they had my GPS. What had happened with that? Had anyone followed up? Had anyone tried to find me? Had I left a trail that could lead back to me? My heart started racing. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand, checked for any missed calls, any voicemails, anything from a number I didn't recognize. Nothing. Just messages from Jessica and my mom and a few spam calls. Maybe they chalked it up to a butt dial or a prank or someone who'd resolved their emergency before the police arrived. Or maybe not. Maybe somewhere in some database there was a record, a call from my number at 9:44 p.m. on a Thursday night from a location where minutes later there had been some kind of confrontation involving Richard Westbrook. Maybe someone was still looking into it, trying to piece together what happened that night, why someone called and then hung up, what they saw, what they knew. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to calm myself, to think rationally. If the police had wanted to talk to me, they would have by now. It had been 3 months. If my call had been important, they would have followed up. Unless they were still investigating. Unless this was bigger than I thought. Unless there were pieces of this story I still didn't understand. I laid back down, tried to sleep, but my mind was racing again. All the careful peace I'd built over the past months was crumbling. The anxiety was back. And lying there in the dark, I realized something terrifying. Maybe this wasn't over. Maybe picking up that phone had consequences I still hadn't faced. Maybe the story I thought was ended was actually still going. Maybe part 2 wasn't the end at all. Maybe it was just the beginning of something else, something I couldn't see yet, something that was still coming. And as that thought settled over me like a cold blanket, my phone buzzed. A text message from a number I didn't recognize. My hand shook as I picked up the phone, opened the message. It said, "We need to talk about Thursday night, tomorrow, 3 p.m., the coffee shop opposite Westbrook's building. Come alone."